But now we're going to be joined by Josh Pate of Pate State University, a good friend of mine. Josh, I know it's been a while, but it's been a fun football season for you, I'm sure. How's everything going? Welcome into Miller's Edge.
It's good, man. I see you on the field after games. It's been a while since we talked publicly. That's what it's been a while for. So let's do it. I'm ready. We got a big week coming up.
That's right. You're looking good, man. I know you stay active in the gym, man. You must have. Did I see you get a good workout in Alabama in the weight room when you came here last?
Hey, that was nice. Now they walked me through a lot of that new equipment, which is like just this side of NASA. That's unbelievable, man. And then they tell you, hey, keep your mouth shut. Don't be talking about this stuff publicly. We don't want anyone else to have it. But it was a good trip down there. It's always that's to me that's the biggest blessing. Like if you're into what I'm into, that's the biggest blessing when we go on the road every week and programs will let you work out in their facility. Like that's dream come true stuff for me because I never thought we'd be able to do that.
No doubt. And I know obviously we've got one of the nicest, but you've been to practically probably every school, all these big schools. Who would you say has the nicest facility that you've been in and got to, use a weight room and just see kind of what they have in store? Who would you say? I know Alabama's got to be one of the top schools. Are there any other ones that come close?
There's no one who tops Alabama. Not surprisingly, Georgia is awesome. Texas is awesome. Oregon is awesome, and they're about to upgrade that place again. Penn State just redid theirs. I'm a big fan of Penn State. I have not been able to work out in every facility yet, but out of the ones I have, those really stand out.
Oh, yeah. No doubt about that. Well, I know you're probably short on time. You're a busy man this week with all the championship games going on, so I want to dive right into it. Like I said, it's been a minute since we talked publicly, so I want to get your thoughts, and I'll start here. Last night you had the playoff rankings released again. Not too much movement going on in that top 10. Georgia at number 1, Michigan number 2, Washington 3. Florida State is at number 4. You got Oregon at 5, Ohio State now 6. Texas 7, Alabama still sitting at number 8. Just overall, Josh, what are your thoughts on those rankings and how things have not really been changing too much?
Well, so my philosophy on this in years past has been don't get caught up in the rankings because they're going to sort themselves out. And that's always worked for me, except for this year when everyone keeps winning. And so we're all the way to conference title weekend, and it hasn't really sorted itself out. And so now we get ourselves in position where Alabama's in the number 8 spot. Okay, and if you were to ask me 3 or 4 weeks ago, I would have told you if Alabama wins out, they're in. And all of a sudden it looks like they may be in a position where they don't control their own destiny. And so now everyone starts working out their hypothetical scenarios. And it's if Michigan wins, if Oregon wins, if Texas wins, if Florida State wins, Bama's out no matter what they do. That's one way to approach this. But as well as I do, it's one thing to play things out in your mind. There is no substitute for watching football games play out on a Saturday. And so if you actually watch Alabama beat Georgia, I think there's a reset button that gets hit in a lot of committee members' minds and a lot of people's minds to where they understand, oh, wait, this actually happened. And now we have to deal with the idea that we're going to tell 12-1 Nick Saban-led Alabama, y'all aren't going to the playoff, even though you just beat our number 1 team in the country that's got 2 championship belts over each shoulder the last 2 years. And it's as simple as this for me. I don't know who would get left out, but I still don't believe they're going to have the stones to look Alabama in the eye and say, nope, we don't have room for you in a 4-team playoff, even though you're a one-loss SEC champ. The one loss was out of conference, and it's to another playoff team. I don't believe they're going to do that, personally.
Yeah, and I don't see that happening either. It's tough to say, though, and it's hard to believe that would happen. But like you said, when you get to this point in the season, and there still are so many teams with these arguments, it's hard to really figure this one out. And then comes the question: if Alabama does beat Georgia, where does Georgia fall, right? Then you've got all these other teams, the Oregons, the Ohio States, Texas with 1 loss. How do you even do that? Definitely is going to get real muddy, that's for sure. But like you said, you just got to let the committee work itself out. But, I mean, what are your thoughts in terms of, is it the 4 best teams or 4 most deserving? Because in my opinion, if you're 12-1 and you beat the number 1 team, you clearly are one of the best 4 teams in the country. I feel like that's a given. But it almost seems like the committee is more so looking. I mean, with Oregon, it appears they're doing more so the eye test. So what is it to you, Josh? I mean, do you think it's the most 4 deserving teams, the 4 best teams, just from your senses of kind of how the committee typically does things?
It's definitely not the four best teams. It never has been. Now, I think in many cases they've gotten the four best, but that is not their criteria. And I thought probably one of the most egregious things I've ever heard from that committee was said last night. I think it was Heather Dinich at ESPN put out a statement from Bill Hancock, who's the president of the playoff committee. And he said, we have never had most deserving team in our lexicon. That's never been our criteria. We are about getting the four best teams in. That is a statement he never should have made because that's a lie. That is not true. The four best teams, for example, would unequivocally not only include Alabama if they win, it would include Georgia too. And I know good and well they're not putting both of those teams in there, or I don't think they would. And the other part of that is, if you're just trying to put purely the four best teams in, I don't care if Florida State wins Saturday. I could have an odds maker come on this show right now and tell you there are 10 to 12 teams that they would favor against Florida State in response to, what their status is at quarterback. Now, the follow-up from my personal point of view is it shouldn't just be purely about who would be favored over who, because that's not the spirit of competition. Like, that's not sports. So there should be a blend of power rating and merit or on-field production. But to sit there and just purely say, we, the committee, always look to put the four best teams in, that's ludicrous. He should never have said that either. What he should have said is, we've got defined criteria, and we choose the most deserving teams based on that criteria, and that should be the end of it.
Yeah, I agree 100% with you. I guess my last question on the whole playoffs thing is, does Alabama truly have a chance of getting in your eyes, Josh? If they beat Georgia, do you feel that they do have a chance of still making it in, even though they're still at 8 right now, where they've been for several weeks?
Yeah, I do. And I think the head-to-head ultimately is not going to be Bama-Texas. Texas is going to get in over Alabama if it comes down to those two. And I would not disagree with that because we saw the game played and results have to matter. But the head-to-head I'm most interested in is Oregon versus Alabama. So I'm gonna go out to the Pac-12 title game Friday night, and then we're going to go to the SEC title game Saturday. I'll see both those games. If we see Oregon win and we see Bama win, at that point you just have a conference champ versus conference champ, which means it comes down to resume. And I looked at those resumes yesterday, probably for the first time this year because I never pay close attention to it. I have no idea how you keep Alabama out and put Oregon in, if that's what the head-to-head comes down to. So I happen to believe Florida State's going to lose. So I think they'll be out of the picture. I happen to think Oregon is going to beat Washington. And I think if Bama upsets Georgia, what are we looking at? We're looking at Michigan in, looking at Texas probably in, and you may be looking at Bama and Oregon in. But if it comes down to only one spot for those teams, and it's Bama-Oregon, I'm putting Bama in. And that's not a shot at Oregon. I think they're one of the two best teams in the country right now in my own personal numbers. But if I'm using their criteria, that committee's own criteria, I don't know how you keep Alabama out. So I absolutely think there's a shot they're in.
Well, that's good news for all these Alabama fans that are listening. Speaking of your poll, how do you come up with your JP poll? Because I love getting to see your poll. Is obviously yours. You don't stray away from just running with the narratives. You're not afraid to move teams up or down depending on how you feel. Is that strictly just off your eye test, or do you run any numbers when you come up with your JP poll?
Yeah, no, there's no eye test at all. There's no gut at all. I take my opinion out of it entirely. That is built off a model, and all the model's job is to do is put a number on a game. It's no different than what Vegas does. We just try and put a more accurate number on the game than Vegas does. So I put out a list of teams, a power rating of teams, in the exact order that model would favor them against each other on a neutral field. And, I'll give you an example of where people get bent out of shape. So we got Oregon-Washington earlier this year. Oregon's a 3-point favorite. Vegas is therefore telling you they'd be favored by 6 on a neutral field. They go lose a close game to Washington in Seattle. The next week, I still have Oregon ahead of Washington, and Washington fans are just irate because how could you put a team above us when we just beat them? Well, the simple answer was they would be favored against you if they played this week. And then their follow-up was, well, who cares who would be favored? And I said, well, I care. And if you don't care, this is not the poll for you. Well, I'm not trying to do predictive stuff here. I'm not trying to rank teams. There are a million different rankings out there if you want that. Well, we fast forward a couple of months, and we have those same two teams playing this Friday, and Oregon, the team that lost, is a 9.5-point favorite. because that's how odds making and power ratings work. And that's also why I can tell you that committee is not purely looking to put the 4 best teams in. Because if you were looking to just do that, Georgia not only could afford to lose Saturday, they could afford to have lost to Tennessee in their second to last game of the season. And they'd still be viewed as one of the 4 best teams in the eyes of Vegas. So is the committee seriously telling me just because odds makers say one thing, we're going to put them in? You can't possibly have that as your modus operandi. So, again, I know we're kind of going back and forth on the questions you asked, but I do what I do because I think it's a fun metric, a little tool to have at your disposal and nothing more. But that committee, if they claim that's how they think, I say there's no way. I call BS on that immediately.
Well, hopefully we get you on that committee one day. Or I guess once you go to the 12 teams, Alabama shouldn't necessarily have this concern too much longer. But I wish we went by the JP poll because Alabama fans should feel good about that. You've got them on the most recent one, number 3, right behind Oregon and Georgia. But on Alabama, I know we talked a lot about the rankings. Just what have your thoughts been? Because you were at the game, the Texas game. I saw you on the sidelines. You were there. You saw how Alabama played that game. Everybody that watched it saw them. A lot of people said they didn't necessarily look like Alabama or an Alabama team. Fast forward to now, the way they're playing, personally, I think that they've come along quite well. They've progressed and improved each and every single week. And they're playing some of their best football right now. I know we just had the Auburn game. That said Jordan Hare. Well, when you average that in with the last few weeks before that, they're playing some dang good football. What are your thoughts been on the progression of this football team and Jalen Milroe, who a lot of people counted him out? He was benched USF week. Now, I mean, the guy's putting up record-set numbers, and some people have him in some Heisman conversations. Obviously, that's a long shot for this season. But have you been impressed just with the improvement that Alabama's made since week 2?
Very much so. Very much so. And I don't devalue early season results. I think there's room to have both opinions. You can take the Texas loss seriously, but you can also understand teams evolve. And the best teams improve week over week, especially come November. I think a lot of people had trouble seeing Bama struggle last week. And look, you and I probably don't view it the same way, especially you, because you played in that game down there. And just understand how unique it is unto anything else Alabama does all year.
Exactly.
I mean, look, what was it? It was the 2017 year, I believe, when you had you and Wilson and Hall coming off injury, and you guys go in there and lose a game, still win a national title. I think that was that the year. I'm getting that correct.
Yep, 2017.
Okay, so did that make you anywhere less of one of the best teams in the country, or did a football game happen with some crazy results? Like that's how I look at it.
Yep.
And you afford yourself the opportunity to play a close game every now and then and still get considered one of the best teams in the country because you are going to get a shot this Saturday against Georgia. And Georgia played a one-possession game against Tech. Bama had a miracle against Auburn. I don't think either of those things are going to matter one bit when they line up Saturday. And I think Bama lines up and favors decently against Georgia. They're built to play Georgia. Georgia's built to play them. So it's the game I am most looking forward to out of any that we've seen all year. Because I think as vulnerable as Bama may be at times in pass pro, I don't know that Georgia's built on the edge to expose that. And so if Milroe has some time, the explosive plays will be there, the runs will be there, Georgia's mid-60s defensively on third down rate in the red zone. So there's a path. There's absolutely a path for Alabama to win that game.
Yeah, no, I agree. And that's what me and my dad have been saying, that we kind of like this matchup. And I'll be honest, I look back at, when we've had – Jalen Hurts playing against Georgia. Look, Kirby Smart, his defense is, pretty much the same thing we run. We know how our defense can struggle against dual threat quarterbacks. So I can see that same thing being an issue this weekend for Georgia. I think if we call the game tailored to Jalen Milroe, get him involved with his legs, and everybody's executing and playing physical, because you and I both know how this Alabama-Georgia matchup always goes. It's a physical, hard-fought game that's typically going to come down to the end. So I agree. So, correct me if I'm wrong. You actually believe that you have Alabama winning the SEC championship. Did I see that right?
Yeah, I sure did. I ended up going that direction. My biggest concern on the other side is Alabama being banged up along the defensive front, and my biggest fear for Bama would be if Georgia just starts to sustain drives and starts to lean on them, and 2nd and 5 becomes 3rd and 2, becomes move the chains over and over again. That's what concerns me the most. Like, I love Bama's skill on the perimeter at defensive back. I don't think Beck has seen that all year. I love Bama's ability to pressure him. I don't think Beck and his offense have seen that all year. But if that gets rendered a little irrelevant because they can just run the ball on you more than you anticipated, that to me is the biggest concern. So I'm kind of banking on Bama getting enough stops to where they can probably have one more possession than otherwise they would have and get the job done.
Good deal. Well, you heard it here, folks. Josh Pate, the man, the myth, the legend, man. He's got Alabama taking care of business this Saturday against Georgia. Hopefully that comes true. Josh, man, I appreciate you so much for hanging out and joining us, man. You always got great stuff, man. Before we let you go, I know everybody already knows where to find you, but just remind them where they can catch up with you and keep up with all your good content.
No, brother, I appreciate you. You can find, if you want to watch it on YouTube, you can just search Late Kick on YouTube. If you want to listen on podcast, search Late Kick on podcast. We basically put it wherever you want so you can listen to it or watch it at your convenience.
No doubt. Well, if you haven't checked him out, you need to go check him out, man. Josh has got the best college football material on the internet. He's speaking facts, as you just heard him, and he's a great friend of mine. I appreciate him and everything that he does for the game of football. So, Josh, we appreciate you coming on and joining us, man. Have a great rest of your week and safe travels. I know you're going to be busy going to you said Pac-12 championship, then the SEC championship. So, safe travels, man. Enjoy your weekend.
All right, brother. I'll see you Saturday.
Yes, sir. Sounds good, brother.